Welcome back to College Football Addiction. You see him there on the screen, my man, Coach Coop. I knew you'd throw up the U. I knew we couldn't even get 3 seconds into this thing and he'd
Of
get
course.
going.
The
But
man with the big hat is back.
Miami has a huge one on Sunday night. Man, really a loaded first 5 games of the year for Miami. But we'll start out with this Notre Dame game and we'll talk about it a little bit. But does it feel like the offseason for Miami has drug by to you? Do you feel like it's kind of gone quicker than normal, pretty standard? Obviously, Miami not thrilled with the way they finished last year, but a good year overall. Thoughts on just, has the summer feel like it's drag on for you?
It actually goes by pretty quick. I always say, if you're a Miami fan, there's never a dull, boring moment. There's always transfer portal movement,
Yeah.
recruiting stuff, coaches leaving, sometimes coaches coming in. It's always pretty exciting, so there's something going on. But I will say the closer it gets, the longer it seems to take to get here, however, because
Yeah.
just the hype and excitement, it's finally here. The talk is over. It's time to see how these games actually play out.
Yeah, for sure. I won't make an off-season joke with Miami, but it was right there. I wanted
I
to.
can take it. I mean,
The one thing I appreciate you, we're talking a little off air, just like personal stuff. The one thing I appreciate you is I think you're one of the most reasonable when it comes to like being able to both dish and take trash talk and at the same time remaining incredibly objective. Like you're gonna do the things to hype up your team, and you lean fully into the fandom, and I appreciate that a ton. Even though we're rivals, right? I mean, we're not rivals. I don't care. I hang out, but like even though the teams we support are rivals, I think you do a great job of when you really do a game breakdown, being very objective about things. And sometimes you take heat for that, and sometimes your own fans don't like it, but I do. You stick right down the middle, and I like that a ton. So. Maybe I like it a little bit less Florida State week, but I like it most weeks.
that's just the approach that I decide to take. I can't stand the fan police, just being honest. I tell people, let people fan the way they want to fan. If
Sure.
they want to be 12-0 every year, let them be that. I know that I bleed orange and green, but I do like to kind of take an objective approach when
Yeah.
talking about the games.
So this game, the quarterbacks are such a storyline in this one, both sides, right? Not just Miami's with Carson Beck coming in, but CJ Carr at Notre Dame. Let's start with Beck. A lot of people think, hey, can Miami win without Cam Ward basically putting on a Superman cape and saving them like he did over and over and over again last year? And I think that's a fair question. And, if Beck can be anything like he was in 2023, then I think Miami would be just fine. If he's closer to the 2024 Beck, then yeah, Miami will probably have some problems in some bigger games. But what are your realistic expectations for him this year?
The amount of disrespect that I've seen being thrown Carson Beck's way just blows my mind, especially if we're speaking specifically on Notre Dame fans going into this one. And I just don't see how they have room to talk with them, rolling into this game with a red shirt freshman quarterback that hasn't completed a pass in a live game at the collegiate level. But Carson Beck, you can't deny that he has experience. I believe he's somewhere around 24-3 as a starter. Everyone is going to compare those 2023 and 2024 stats. I know he doubled his interception total from 6 to 12. But realistically, the dude threw for over 3,000 yards still, 28 touchdowns. I'm really confused on what is considered a mediocre quarterback these days. This is a guy who, again, when you look at the Miami Hurricanes, let's take Cam Ward out of the equation because that dude was a unicorn. Carson Beck's numbers look great overall to us. I think that he's going to do well. I'm not really concerned about the injury because I have to trust that they had a medical team that evaluated him and provided a turnaround time with him bouncing back. And I think that the O-line can help protect him. I'm very excited. I think Carson Beck will do well. I'm really pumped to see how he and Shannon Dawson run this offense together. And there are some question marks, however, that involves the guys around him, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah, I try to do a good job of not relating everything to Florida State, but I'm going to do a terrible job of it here. Beck in 23 and 24 reminds me almost of Jameis in 13 and 14, where 13, Jameis had so many weapons around him, and everything he did was just, and they're not the same quarterback, right? So, like, before the Florida State fans go crazy. But
Right.
just that second year, Jameis lost some guys to the NFL. Kelvin Benjamin went in the first round, lost Kenny Shaw, lost a lot of that offensive line that they had that made him have just forever back there to throw. And he forced the ball too much. And when you look at Beck's turnovers, it's not like he's misreading defenses. You know, he's trying to be a hero, right? And that's where I think he's got to back it down a little bit. And to me, that's much easier to do than a guy that just can't read coverages, right? Because we know Carson can read coverages. The problem was last year to me, when you go look at his turnovers and interceptions, he was trying to play hero ball, and he had to. They led their top 3 wide receivers led the country in drops. Like, they were terrible on the outside. He had to be a hero. But that's what it really reminded me too. Again, I'm not comparing Beck and Jameis. Like, they're very different. And obviously I think Jameis is way better. But like, I don't. That's what it reminded me of, was just he tried to be the hero way too much. And if Miami can, I don't know, lean more on their ground game, have a better offensive line, have more reliable weapons outside, I think that would be a pretty easy thing to cut out. I don't really understand the Carson Beck hate. It's probably because he went to Miami. It's probably because he was dating a supermodel at some
That's
point.
a big part. Yeah.
I'm not as low. Now, again, I don't think he's Ward, because I don't think anybody in this country is Ward this year, including the top, like Nussmeier and Klebnik and stuff. But I don't understand the hate. I'm not as low on him as a lot of people are. I mean, my fandom aside, like, sure, do I want him to have a great year? Not really. But I don't understand, like, why people they talk about, like, off-field drama. A guy breaks up with his girlfriend. Guys break up with their girlfriends all the time, and it doesn't get covered like this. Now, she's a famous athlete too, and so I get it. But like, I think people they're going to be pissed when he has a good year. That's my take, and I'm probably going to be one of them. But like, I don't get it.
Now, I continue to say that, even let's say a lot of Georgia fans maybe were sick and tired of seeing his face. I don't know. He had been there, for a minute. But I think the storylines are totally different if he stays at Georgia and you talk
Sure.
about the experience and they say, oh, this is the bounce back year for
100%.
Beck. This is where he's going to build his NFL draft stock, back up. But no, Miami spends big money. You bring him down to South Florida, and now all of a sudden, this is a mid quarterback. This guy's no good. You overspent. But as we said at the beginning, it's time for the football games to be played. So we'll see.
It would shock me if Beck's not a top 3 quarterback in the ACC this year.
I'm very high on Carson Beck.
Yeah,
this year.
I don't think he's as good as Cade. Like, Cade's my QB1, but it would not shock me at all if he was the second best quarterback in the conference. At worst, like 3rd or 4th. Like, I don't think he's a bad. I think people are hoping and dreaming that he is. And we've seen regression. Like, he could be the same as he was in 24. He could be worse, right? Like, football happens. But I don't know. It's a wild one to me. What in this matchup specifically, talking about those weapons, Notre Dame's secondary is elite. There is no doubt about that. There is no sugarcoating that. Really, their whole defense could be top 5 in the country. And so that's a big question, is can Miami, with a lot of new weapons, which I'm very high on Miami's offensive line, I'm very high on their running backs. I think they're some of the best in the conference, both sides of that. Wide receiver is a huge question mark to me against a really talented defensive secondary. How much confidence do you have in Miami's weapons to replace what they lost, and then in this matchup specifically, go out and get the job done?
It sounds kind of crazy to say this, but let me explain. Confidence level is very low right now. But realistically, it's just because I don't really know what to expect out of these guys. Miami, as you said, the wide receiver room is a big question mark. Tight ends, I think Miami is okay. They have Elijah Lofton. They brought in Bauman, the transfer. But C.J. Daniels coming off of injury, Tony Johnson, Keelan Marion from BYU. These are guys that maybe they did a couple of big things where they were at originally, but how does that translate over to Miami, playing with a new quarterback and a totally different offense, these hired mercenaries that Miami brings in, and the guys behind them? Let's just be real. Canes fans, of course, were going to hype them up. You hear JoJo Trader, Ray, Nye Carr. You keep hearing these names. But let's be honest, they have very limited playing time in an actual live game. Yeah. So it's a big time question mark, and I'm glad you mentioned that Notre Dame's corners are pretty elite. I wouldn't be surprised if they run a lot of man coverage and just see if Miami's receivers can get some separation, and kind of test that early. So it's something that I would be concerned about. My tone might change, third or fourth quarter of that game, and I think that it's something that you're not really concerned about when we think long term. Game 3, 4, 5, you get later into the season, those guys get more comfortable, the chemistry and the timing. But it is probably my biggest area of concern. And you already addressed it. I'm hoping solid O line, Mark Fletcher at running back, Jordan Lyle, that they can lean on that if needed. But it's a big time question mark for sure.
Yeah, if they can run the ball effectively, it'll open everything up. Running on Notre Dame is easier said than done. But Miami, again, I either have the best or the second best offensive line in the ACC, and then I think there's a pretty good gap there. Like Clemson and Miami have like elite offensive lines, and then it's kind of everybody else in the ACC below them. They have SEC type, what we would think of as elite SEC type offensive lines.
Right.
The problem for Miami, Notre Dame also has an elite defensive line. So how does that mash, right? Like how does that who wins that battle? If you tell me right now who wins between Notre Dame's D line and Miami's offensive line, I'll tell you a pretty good idea who's going to win the game. But I think that's a big question. If they can establish the run, they'll have things will be easier. They'll have to creep a guy down into the box. They'll be able to find those wide receivers. They won't be as contested of catches. Carson won't have to play hero ball, but you and I can speculate on all we want. We need to see it on Sunday night.
Correct. Yep.
Another area of concern, potentially, maybe addressed somewhat in the offseason, I know they were heavy in the portal, is the secondary on the other side. Now, the teams kind of mirror each other in some of their strengths. Notre Dame wants to run the ball too. I don't think they want to come out here and pass 40 times unless Miami secondary is just as bad as it was last year, which I don't think there could be a way that it is. But if Notre Dame is able to run the ball, what about Miami's secondary? If they do try to have to throw the ball around a little bit, do you have more confidence, at least than last year, in Miami's secondary to be improved?
There's a saying that people use, it can't get any worse than this, right? Now, I'm actually a firm believer in saying, whoa, 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 pump the brakes. We don't know that. We're going to have to see it. But I would like to believe that Corey Heatherman is an upgrade over Lance Guidry. But at the end of the day, it is pretty much a fully rebuilt defense on the back end. I mean, the majority of Miami's cornerbacks and safeties that are starting are transfers. So there's some big names in there, but again, how are these guys going to look in a new defense, on a new team? There's no warm-up game. This is not Bethune-Cookman that we have in week 2. This is the national championship runner-up that we're going to see game number 1. So they don't really have a whole lot of time to get comfortable. They got to come out and play on fire in this first game. As far as confidence goes, I do believe that Miami has some athletes back there. They have some guys that are going to be good. It's just such an interesting spot to be in, to have a big game number 1 here, and to know that it's a new defensive coordinator and all of these new faces on that side of the ball. And you want to believe, right? As a Miami fan, I want to say man, we are ready to rock. This is going to be such an improvement. And I hate to kind of ride the fence, but it's almost I'm going to have to see,
Miami's front is really good. Their defensive line and their linebackers, not as much of a concern there as you have in the secondary. And certainly they could be the secondary's best friend. If they can get pressure on a young quarterback and make him uncomfortable, if they can stop the run without having to bring an extra guy down to the box, that's what will help the secondary the most, is if they can control the line of scrimmage. Again, easier said than done for both sides, because I like both lines of scrimmage on both teams a ton. But it's so cliche too, because, games are one of the trenches. I get it. Everybody says that. But really, who wins up front is what will end up determining how much the secondary will have to be relied on. And so, I don't know. Miami's got some monsters on that defensive line. Like, there's no doubt about it. And so if they can get home, if they can make a young quarterback uncomfortable, I think they'll be fine. If not, and he has plenty of time to pick them apart, I think you will see some of those struggles, in that secondary, because it is just game 1. I have a ton of confidence in Heatherman to be really, really good, but with a lot of transfers, how's the communication? How's that against a defending runner-up in our sport? I think that's kind of where I'm like, man, this could be really, really good or really, really bad for Miami.
I think the thing that both Miami and Notre Dame fan bases don't want to talk about is the fact that it's not the end of the world for either of these teams if they lose it.
Yeah.
I think that whichever team is the loser in this is going to bounce back and have a pretty darn good season. I know that this is the game we're talking about, and you want to win them all. But both of these teams, maybe CJ Carr gets more comfortable throughout the season. Miami, works on communication, and it's, the corners and stuff are locked in, receivers, timing everything with Carson Beck. So I don't want to sound like this game is not important. Obviously it is. But both of these teams, I think, will have a good year regardless of the outcome of this one.
Yeah, for sure. And because you just look at both their schedules. Now, I will tell you this. I think they both play an SEC team in 2 or 3 weeks after this. Different SEC teams. But whoever loses this, that SEC game that they'll have in a few weeks becomes almost a must win, right?
Yeah, Notre Dame, I believe, has a bye week and then plays Texas A&M.
Yep.
So that would be tough if you drop that game to Miami and then you got to play the Aggies after that off a bye week. You start doubting, was CJ Carr the wrong choice?
Yep.
Should it maybe have been Kenny Minchie instead? And then there's all these rumors swirling around within the fan base. It could be bad. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah. Miami drops this first one. They welcome the Gators to the Swamp. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around that. If they start 0-2, now certainly the conference would still be very much in play, and they don't have to play Clemson this year, so they could still take care of business and do what they need to do. But man, there would be zero room for error at that point. So yeah, it's not make or break, but if they, whoever loses it, it's kind of on pins and needles the rest of the way. It's early, and I want to get a prediction from you, but it is only Tuesday, so I won't hold you to it real hard. You don't have to do a score because I know you'll do that.
I have numbers. Later. I have numbers.
Oh, we have them already. Let's go. But before we do that, I do want to go real quick, just kind of rapid fire these. The big games across the country. Texas, Ohio State. Who you got and what?
Give me Texas. I don't like either one of them, but I cannot pick you know who for any reason, no matter what, ever. Next one.
Clemson, LSU.
I'll take Clemson on that one.
Yeah, I think they finally beat an SEC team for the first time in 2 years. I'll make this a little interesting. Bama minus 13.5.
Ooh,
it's too easy. It's too easy to take a 2-touchdown favorite.
Yeah.
Can't just ask the game.
Man, okay, I'm not going to sit here and hype up Florida State because I know you would gobble that up. But I think that Florida State improves a decent bit this year. I mean, Gus Malzahn and pair him with Castellanos, who I know he gets a lot of hate, but I think he'll be a better fit. You said 13.5, Bama? They probably, yeah. I mean, I think Florida State still loses by multiple scores, though, against Bama.
Yeah, it's a tough one to open with. I don't know how many teams in the country I would pick against Bama in week 1.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 or 3. But yeah.
But I want y'all to win. I'll come on here and say I want Florida State to win because, when Miami rolls into Doak, I want that game to mean a little something. And the way college football math works is if Florida State beats Bama, then we beat Florida State. That means we beat Bama. It's just how it works.
You basically just claim another championship at that point. Pulling Auburn.
Yep.
All right, and then your game, Miami Notre Dame on Sunday night.
Are you sure they're ready for this?
They're probably not. The comments one way or the other are not ready.
Call me a homer if you want. I have it close, 27-24, Miami on top. I'm not trying to throw shade or disrespect Notre Dame. I think they have a darn good football team. I said even if they lose this, I think they'll bounce back. But I think that Miami wins this.
I am leaning Miami at this point. I really feel like it could go either way. I'll tell you this. I'm in such a conundrum. I think Marcus Freeman can coach circles around absolutely everyone in the sport. And I'm not as confident in Mario, but I am confident in Dawson and Heatherman. So it's like if Mario will just get out of the way on like the in-coaching decisions and stuff, I think they'd be fine. And that's not even like a bunch of shade. Like he's had blunders and stuff. Freeman's just a freaking good in-game coach and does stuff that you're just like, holy cat, how? But I have a little more confidence in Beck. And I think quarterback play is so important in our sport. It's more important than any other position in any other sport is the quarterback play in football. And so that's why I think I'm leaning Miami. But I don't know. I'll probably change my mind 4 times before we get back to the end of the year.
We want to recreate this.
I can't see it. Bring it a little closer. Is that 17?
Yes, I have this printed out.
Gosh.
Let's remind them in case there are any Notre Dame fans here. They say, Coop, Miami fans, let it go. I'm never letting it go. The last time we played y'all was 2017. This is what happened. This was the environment. This is what you should expect until you show me otherwise. You're rolling into Hard Rock, our house. Prepare to get beat down.
I will tell you a funny story and then I'll let you go. Florida State played Clemson that day in 2017. It was the year that Francois got hurt against Bama in the opener. And so James Blackman had to start that game. Well, he started the rest of the games. We started that game and we were down by 4 with the ball on the other side of the 50 in the fourth quarter, right? Like 7 or 8 minutes to go. And we thought we had a chance. We were like, okay, down 4 with the ball, other side of the 50. He gets sacked for like a loss of 20. We end up losing by 10. Was never, that was our one shot to do it. So I go out to a bar with my buddy on his birthday and we're watching the game, the Notre Dame game. It kicks off. And I'm like, well, at least we'll get to watch Notre Dame beat Miami. And boy, once it was like 28-0, I was like, all right, man, we're out of here, bro. Like I ain't watching this anymore. So anyway, I'll just try not to tune in this year.
Great story. Great story.
Coop, where can people follow you, man? Where can they find your work?
Go to YouTube, type in Coach Coop. No, I'm not a real coach unless you count the virtual season on CFB 26. I do want to make it known that I led the Miami Hurricanes to an ACC championship game after a 1-4 start. I'm very proud of that. And you'll probably see, stuff popping up of me in a garbage can or things like that. That's in the past. Miami is good now. We're trending up. And Notre Dame diss track, I do want to push this. Dropping Wednesday. I don't know when the viewers are going to see this video, but I'm telling you, the college football world is not ready for this one.
When do you drop? Do you know what time you're dropping that? I'll just drop this right after and I'll link it.
I don't know. Just sometime Wednesday. I'm not sure.
All right. I'll keep an eye out and I'll link it in the comments. So, Coop, thanks for hanging out, man. I appreciate you as always.
Absolutely.